Thanks, Ajahn, and welcome everyone from all around the world who's joined us today. If it's the afternoon for you, good afternoon. If it's the morning here in Asia, good morning to you. It's a great delight for us to have Ajahn Nyaniko from Abhayagiri here with us for the,
Nyaniko.
sorry, Ajahn Nyaniko for the Vassa 2025 series. So with all due respect, let us all put our palms together since some of us are meeting Tanajan for the first time. Offer Tanajan 3 respectful bows. So we'd like to invite Tanajan to begin by guiding us in a short guided meditation, please, Tanajan.
Okay, shall we begin?
Yes, please.
Okay. So please, everybody, find a comfortable meditation posture for yourself. Ideally, not lying down, but if you have an injury or you have a medical need, then it is okay to lie down. Um, but upright posture, some of you may need to sit in a chair, and some of you may like to sit cross-legged on the ground. So either way is good as long as your back is able to be straight. We're going to do a short guided meditation on forgiveness, as this is a big theme for me these days. So I would like to talk a little bit about forgiveness and the importance of it to our practice, because the longer I am in the robes, the more people I meet, the more I see the importance of this as a practice, this giving of forgiveness to others, and giving of forgiveness to oneself. And we can simply start with a few minutes of just breath meditation and settle into our meditation, into a sense of ease and well-being. And we'll just sit quietly for a few minutes before I talk about forgiveness. Now, as we're sitting, then you can try to bring to mind, something unfair or unjust that was done to you by somebody in the past. And probably almost all of us have this, something unfair that was done to us that we think about quite a bit, that we're not able to let go of. And see if we can mentally say to that person or that situation, I can forgive this. I forgive you. We tend to underestimate how strong the obstacles are when we're not able to forgive. We create very strong obstacles for ourselves. Actually, peace will be almost impossible if we can't forgive. So we start by trying to forgive somebody else, whether it's a coworker, a boss, a family member, or somebody else who may have betrayed us or mistreated us, treated us unfairly in the past. Are we still holding on to it? Can we forgive? Just the simple words, I forgive you, I forgive this situation. And if we're not able to do it, that's okay. It may have been too strong. We may feel that we can't forgive in this moment, and that's okay. Just make note of that. Everybody gets treated unjustly. Everybody gets treated unfairly sometimes. Now, the next part of the forgiveness meditation is to think of something you did that you felt regret over. You felt it was a mistake. You felt that you could have done it better, and you haven't really been able to forgive yourself. It may have been way in the past, something you can't really fix, something you did that you wish you hadn't have done, somebody you may have hurt, you may have made some bad karma, and try to say to yourself, I forgive myself for this. I can move on from this. I forgive myself for this. I made a mistake. I can forgive. I can forgive myself. In the Buddha's teachings, forgiveness is the direct antidote to fear. People ask a lot about fear. Normally, fear, what's underlying it, what's behind it, is a lack of forgiveness. It's hard to see, and it's maybe not something we look at all the time. But if we're experiencing some sort of fear, try to first look at where that fear is coming from and see what it's connected with or who it's connected with, and try to forgive that situation. Ultimately, we want to forgive everything. When we can forgive everything and everyone and ourselves, then we have no more forgiveness debts. It's like we're free of debt, and we can go headfirst into our practice. When we can really forgive, the signs of that are we will feel very gladdened. We will feel a sense of wholesome self-worth, self-confidence. We'll feel proud of ourselves that we were able to forgive, we were able to let go of that. The mind will be gladdened, we'll feel good. Some people might say that some things are unforgivable, but in Buddhism, everything is forgivable, everything can be forgiven. That's why we have this ceremony of asking forgiveness and giving forgiveness. It's actually one of the most important communal ceremonies that we do. The next part, which is perhaps more difficult, because we can forgive something done to us, we can forgive ourselves, but sometimes it's more difficult to forgive when somebody does something unfair or unjust to somebody else, not to us. We feel like we could forgive if something was done to us, but if we see something done to somebody else who is perhaps helpless or in a situation where they cannot defend themselves, then we will feel we can't forgive that person who treated the other person unfairly. That's much more difficult. So to do that, we need to look at the suffering of our being upset with that person. And we will see that actually not forgiving even people like that is a state of suffering for us. And when we can see the suffering of it, then we can let go and be at ease. Sometimes there's nothing we can do. So for the remaining 6 minutes or so, we'll try to just develop a sense of ease and abiding in a strong intention of forgiving others, forgiving ourselves, and clearing the accounts.
Thank you, Senator. I'd like now to request the Dhamma. Cheryl, would lead us in the chanting, please.
Ajahn now request the Dhamma talk. Brahmajaloka Tibadi Sahampati Katanjali an Divarang Ayajata Santi Tasata Parajaka Jadika Desi Tutamang Anukam Pimang Pajam.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. We'll see if I can go the full 35 or 40 minutes. Usually I give about 20 to 30-minute Dhamma talks, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what comes out. And I do want to talk a little bit more about the theme of forgiveness because there may be a lot of questions about this. And, how do you forgive when things really bad are happening around us? Or how do we forgive when really unfair, unjust things happen to us? How do we forgive when unjust, unfair things happen to others around us, and so on? And there's, and eventually we have to learn how to do this if we want to be at peace, because there's always going to be something unfair or unjust happening in the world or around us or to us. We just can't stop that. It's a samsara. This is just the way things are in the world. So how do we actually live in this sense of forgiveness? And this is illustrated by the teaching of Venerable Sariputta, which is the origin story of the forgiveness ceremony that we do. There is actually a monk who punches Venerable Sariputta. So he's upset. He has actually previously he had accused Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Moggallana of having evil wishes and basically just really drawing close to the Buddha, and the Buddha just liked them because they did everything he said, and they were kind of playing Mr. Nice Guy with the Buddha, and so the Buddha was giving them special privileges. And so another monk who didn't like this, he started criticizing Venerable Sariputta, Venerable Mahamoggallana for this. And uh, eventually it came out that they were not, he wasn't right to do that, and the Buddha had him desist. But then he developed a grudge against Venerable Sariputta, and then one day he walked up to him and punched him, physically punched Venerable Sariputta. And then afterwards he was stricken with remorse, and um, he went and asked forgiveness from Venerable Sariputta. And Venerable Sariputta said, "Even as you were punching me, I forgave you as it was happening." He said, "Even as you were hitting me, I forgave you as it was happening." And he said, "Please forgive me for anything I may have done to you." Of course, Venerable Sariputta doesn't need to ask forgiveness, but that's where the format of the ceremony comes from, is Venerable Sariputta says, "Please forgive me as well for anything I may have done to you that was upsetting or inappropriate." And so then this monk says, "Yes, I forgive you." And then that clears the slate between them. So really it was Venerable Sariputta didn't need to do anything. He was already pure in his actions and in his conduct. But for that other monk, this ceremony provided a lot of benefit for him. and he was able to at least get back on good terms. So, we may think of like if we have something stolen from us, for example, say many people this I don't know how much it happens in Singapore, but if you live in San Francisco or a place like that, it's very common to have what's called a smash and grab, where somebody smashes your car window and grabs a bag that's sitting on the seat, or somebody breaks into your car when it's parked at the airport in the parking garage. This is very common in California. And so, how do there's this sense of violation when something like that happens. So, how do we forgive people like that? We think, well, they're not gonna get any benefit from me forgiving them, but we get the benefit. We do get benefit when we forgive. So that really is for our benefit. And uh, and then there's, more horrible things. How can we forgive, people who have killed other people, or things, really horrible things that have happened in the world? How can we forgive those? But again, to see the suffering of a lack of forgiveness, to see the strain and suffering and stress that causes us, and that's when we need to, because we're not going to find a logical reason to forgive. It's actually not logical. It's more a sense of forgiving, courageously forgiving no matter what. We don't need to try to find a reason to forgive. The reason to forgive is just that we're going to suffer less, and we're going to be more at ease, and we're going to have more wisdom and understanding because our mind is going to be more clear. And if we truly forgive, and if we truly can let go of these things, then we are going to be much more at ease and in a much better position to act wisely in all sorts of situations moving on into the future. So this is a really great thing to be doing. This is what we call Abhayadana. So I live at Abhayagiri. So Abhayagiri means fearless mountain, but Abhaya, it means fearless, but it also means forgiveness, because Abhayadana is the giving of fearlessness, and the Buddha defines that as the giving of forgiveness. So when we give forgiveness, we give fearlessness, because then there can be a sense of trust. We know that, okay, well, uh, our friend made a mistake. They've asked forgiveness. They recognized their mistake, or we recognized our own mistake and we asked forgiveness, and that can develop very strong trust between people. And when we develop that sense of trust, then there's a lack of fear. Mostly, if it's fear between people or fear of other people, then it's usually coming from a lack of trust. We don't trust that person. They might do or say something behind our back that's not helping us. That is, they may act like they like us in front of us, but then behind our back, they might say or do all sorts of things that are against us. So that can cause fear, fear, concern. We don't we don't know if we can trust that person. But then if somebody asks forgiveness, then that does develop much stronger trust. So there's this sense of forgiveness, trust, leading to a lack of fear. And then through the lack of fear, we are able to act in a way that's much more clear and wise, and to live our lives in a way which is much more at ease. And there's a sense of no worries, no worries, no problems. There's a sense of ease and well-being. And now that is important, because I end up these days more talking about how to make the mind happy, or how to gladden the mind, because rather than talking about the fineries of meditation, just because the gladdened mind or the happy mind comes before samadhi in the proximate cause dependent origination. Happy mind is easily concentrated. So, of course, we all want these states of samadhi. We've read about them, we've heard about them, or maybe we've even had them at times. But the cause of them is the happy mind, the gladdened mind, and forgiveness, being able to forgive in all sorts of ways, is a precursor to that. So that's what I end up talking about a lot these days, and this is what ends up being an obstacle. And I've personally seen people who haven't been able to forgive, who have developed health problems through it. There was actually a former monk. He's not a monk now, but former monk who wasn't able to forgive a very senior monk and he was genuinely treated unfairly, I believe, but because this person was not able to forgive the senior monk for treating them that way, they actually developed very, very strong anxiety and eventually like breathing problems, like where they would feel like they were suffocating. And to me, it just seemed more and more obvious that it was because that person wasn't able to forgive. And it was more just holding on to the injustice of it, holding on to the unfairness of the treatment. And I just kept thinking, gosh, if they could just ask forgiveness, like their problem would be solved. But, there was that obstacle they weren't able to, and they never were able to, and they still haven't been able to. So if really we can solve so many of our problems and sometimes even our physical problems through giving forgiveness and giving forgiveness in ways that we haven't been able to give forgiveness before, this will change our lives. This will change our lives for the better. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. If we can forgive, it's guaranteed that things will get better, not worse. Uh, that's the guarantee of the Buddhist teachings. However, yes, it will seem that some things are unforgivable, or we may intellectually understand that things can be forgiven, but we aren't able to do it yet. We just aren't there yet. So kind of baby steps, having to get there little by little, whether it's the spouse who took off with the kids or the boss who fired us even though it was our coworker who made the mistake and not us, or if it's even the teacher who berated us and criticized us, possibly even in front of a group of people, even though we didn't do that thing. Can we forgive those things? That's a real test of our practice. So sometimes we do ask, how do we know that our practice is developing? One way to know is if we're able to forgive. Another way to know is if we're able to not react with the same strength of reaction that we had in the past. If we're able to not react with as strong of anger as we did in the past. If we're able to not react with as strong of craving as we did in the past. So when somebody criticizes us or embarrasses us or treats us unfairly, how do we react? Is the reaction more measured and less strong than in the past? Are we able to take a deep breath and just forgive in the moment even? If we're able to forgive in the moment, then we've attained mind like water, where we're able to flow into any situation and we don't get bogged down by these things. I know for me, when I first came to the monastery, it's just, yeah, there was another monk I couldn't get along with. So I just had a really, I was in Agarika, so I was just starting out at Abhayagiri. This was 24 years ago. So when I was just starting out, then there was another monk at the monastery who I didn't always get along with. And so then I would be hard on myself. I wouldn't be able to forgive myself for getting upset with this person. So I would get upset with them, then I would get upset with myself. So then I would go back to my kuti and I'd say, okay, tomorrow, no matter what happens, no matter what this person says to me, I'm gonna forgive and let go of it. I'm gonna let go of it and just no matter what it is. So I'd have this really strong determination. And then I would, sure enough, then the next day I would get tested. And the way I would get tested would be then the person would do it to somebody else, not to me. So I could let go of it if it was done to me. I could let go if it was directed at me, but then I found I couldn't let go of it if it was directed at somebody else. If the sense of what was irritating me got directed towards somebody else, then I couldn't let go of it. So okay, well there's still a lot of work to do, and it took me a long time to be able to let go of that as well. But it's really through seeing the suffering and through long-term practice. So we gladden the mind. We want to gladden the mind. That's what we want to do. We want to gladden the mind. forgiveness in all sorts of ways is guaranteed to gladden that. But we can also back up even more and say, well, also long-term sila is going to gladden the mind. So when the sila is, say we keep the 5 precepts, some of us might keep the 8 precepts or more. And if the sila is kept for a long time and becomes part of our nature, that's also the way to gladden the mind. And that's also, it will make it easier for us to forgive others. But we do have to make this conscious because it happens so often that relationships end and friendships end, even to the point where friends become enemies because of a lack of forgiveness. And it's kind of like Longpa Liam. He was here earlier this year. He was here visiting Abhayagiri earlier this year. And one of the teachings he gave was that, well, if you really strongly love somebody, but you don't have Dhamma, then the moment things go wrong, you will hate that person to the same level that you loved them. And you can just see this in the world. It happens all the time. It's so normal. But if the heart has Dhamma, you'll be able to forgive. So the sense of being able to forgive, that's one sign of Dhamma. Also, another sign of Dhamma is when the nature becomes gentle. You don't act out, you don't react in very strong ways. It's like, I think of like my dad. Like he used to be a very, very strong anger type person when I was a young child, and also I just remember him being able to, he could get very, very angry, incredibly angry. And then when I was 19, he actually discovered an Ajahn Chah book and started studying Ajahn Chah. And since that time, his nature got more and more gentle to the point now where he's almost like a completely different person. So the Dhamma becoming more and more ingrained, the anger will fade, the craving, the greed will fade, the sense of forgiveness will become more, and the nature will become gentle. And so that's uh, that's what we can expect from that. And actually, just being around teachers is very, very helpful. So, say we had Luang Por Liam visiting here at Abhayagiri, just being reminded of the goals of practice and being reminded of what is possible with Dhamma practice. But it takes quite a bit of courage and takes faith, confidence. Um, the word faith is saddha, and saddha, if you want to know what it is, you say saddha sila sampanno. So we're talking about making the mind happy through forgiveness and through long-term sila, but then sila is perfected through saddha. So we say saddha sila sampanno. Sila is perfected through saddha. If our sila is tarnished or broken, it's actually a sign that the saddha is not very strong. Saddha is normally translated as faith. And faith is perhaps an imperfect translation. Of course, all translations of Pali terms are more or less imperfect. But with saddha, we can look at that word, which is normally translated as faith, and what is it really? If we say saddha is that quality which is needed to perfect the sila, so we could translate it as faith, but we could also look at the etymology of that word a little bit, just for fun. And saddha, the Sanskrit for that word is shraddha, is the Sanskrit. So, and then the Pali word for religious seeker or one who wants peace is samana, and the Sanskrit is shramana. And in the Sanskrit, shraddha, sure, is the same root as shramana, or one who seeks peace. So it means it has a peaceful quality to it. It has a settled quality to it. So the word saddha has we can think of it as partly it means peace, partly it means to settle. So we can think of it as trust. We can think of it as trust. Saddha could be translated as calm trust or settled trust. We have a sense of confidence, a sense of settled trust in the teachings of the Buddha, a sense of trust in Buddha Dhamma Sangha. So coming back to forgiveness, that it develops trust between people, I do believe that it can strengthen that quality of saddha and thus help all of our other Dhamma qualities to come to fulfillment. There's also the quality of sati. This quality of sati is very, very important. So the quality of sati is the remembrance, and we do have to remember to develop these qualities. We have to remind ourselves to develop these qualities. Sati comes with right effort. So mindfulness and right effort go together. So when we have sati, or a recollection of ourselves, recollection of where we're at in the moment, a recollection of where the mind is at, we are actually able to see where we aren't able to forgive. So something may have happened to us in the past, some sort of traumatic event. I mean, as I meet more people here in the US, and the longer I'm in a position of being a teacher and a senior monk in a large monastery, the more it becomes clear to me that a lot of people have trauma. Almost everybody has some form of trauma or another. And the trauma, I've talked to people who have the most horrible trauma. I mean, like, you know, like sexual abuse at the age of 5, um, things like that. So that really affects people through their whole life. And then how can you forgive something like that? So we might need to back up a little bit, because if we're not able to forgive yet because we were, say, some sort of monster treated us in a very horrible way, say when we were young, there was nothing we could do about it, then what we have to come back to is the suffering of that other person and the ignorance of that other person. Then we can actually, we have to start with equanimity. And equanimity is developed through the recollection of karma. All beings are the owners of their karma, heir to their karma, born of their karma, related to their karma, abide supported by their karma. Whatever karma they do, for good or for ill, of that they will be the heir. So all beings are the owners of their karma. So that helps to develop equanimity in the mind. Once we've developed some equanimity, then we can go into compassion. If we haven't developed equanimity first, and we try to have compassion for somebody who may have horribly mistreated us when we were a child, just using that as an example, just because I've met people, it seems like a lot of people have had this experience. So I use that as an example of, if we haven't developed equanimity first and we try to go into compassion, chances are it's going to be too difficult and we're going to be overwhelmed. So we do have to have a sense of equanimity before we practice compassion. And just as a side note, compassion is more difficult than loving kindness. Karuna is more difficult than metta, because metta focuses on happiness and karuna focuses on suffering. So focusing on suffering is more difficult than focusing on happiness, but perhaps more efficacious because it is aligned with the First Noble Truth. So compassion is linked with the Four Noble Truths as well. So with compassion, then when we've developed a basis of equanimity and we can reflect on people who have treated us unfairly, we reflect on them with compassion. Then maybe we will be able to forgive. So we need to set up the forgiveness. If we can't do it right away, we set it up by first, if for anybody who is taking notes, first equanimity, then compassion, then forgiveness. So those 3 things can be helpful. And we still may not be able to do it, but at least it's a start. We're using sati to bring these things to mind. And we can know that it is possible. This is very, very important. It is possible. I like to bring up the example of Louis Zamperini, who wrote a book called Unbroken, his memoirs, his autobiography. He was an American prisoner of war in World War II, and he was a prisoner of war in Japan. And he underwent all sorts of horrific trials and horrific beatings and got treated so horribly, miraculously survived. And once the war ended and he actually got taken home, he became an alcoholic because it was so traumatic. It was so horrific how he had been treated and so amazing that he survived that he went into darkness and became a very, very strong alcoholic. However, it was actually through the teachings of Christianity, but it was forgiveness. It was through forgiveness that he was actually able to one day, he had this insight that he needed to completely forgive everything that had happened in the as a prisoner of war. And he found he was able to radically forgive his tormentors, his torturers. And he was able to, when he did that, his life flipped and he was able to stop drinking. Everything got better in his life. And he just became this person who could do anything. And like he picked up skateboarding at 70, at the age of 70, and he lived to be 100. And he got to the point where he was so courageous in his forgiveness that he actually wanted to personally meet the Japanese soldiers who had beat him. He wanted to go to Japan and actually meet them and forgive them to their face and also ask them forgiveness to forgive him as well for doing whatever he did in the war, for being a soldier or whatever. And they weren't able to do it. They couldn't meet with him. They didn't want to meet with him. But he actually had that impulse, that intention to want to actually meet them face to face. And I just find that very, very powerful. And you can see these examples over and over and over again. When people forgive, it changes their lives for the better. It completely changes their lives. So so again, coming back to if we think, well, this or that person is not worthy of forgiveness. It's actually not the case because we're someone who's worthy. The more worthy we are, the more we will be able to forgive. And that will make us what we call a worthy one if we're able to really forgive. And if we're able to do this, it's going to be so easy to practice. There's not going to be many obstacles in the practice. Most of our obstacles will probably fall away if we're able to radically forgive, to forgive everyone and everything. So yeah, it's just really, I want to encourage all of you in that. All these things, equanimity, compassion, forgiveness, mindfulness, sati, bringing to mind the qualities of BuddhaDhamma Sangha and developing a sense of saddha, of settled trust in the efficacy of the practice and in BuddhaDhamma Sangha. So cultivating a very strong saddha and reminding ourselves that saddha sila sampanno, the sila is perfected through saddha, and all of these good qualities, it's for our benefit. The Buddha teaches us all sorts of good things in order to benefit us and make us have greater well-being, self-confidence, and strength. Nothing in the Buddha's teaching is to lower us. It's all to empower us. And the great thing, I find one of the greatest things of the Buddha's teachings is that we are empowered to do something about our suffering. If our suffering came from outside, if our suffering came from somewhere else, so like the Buddha says, craving is the cause of suffering. So, but then what does our heart really tell us is causing our suffering? Well, the heart says, no, this person is the cause of suffering, or that person is the cause of suffering, or my boss is the cause of suffering, or that politician is the cause of my suffering, or that illness is the cause of my suffering. or whatever is happening in the world is the cause of my suffering. But the Buddha then comes back to, well, craving is the cause of suffering, which is a great thing because if our suffering was truly coming from outside, then there's nothing we can do about it. There's just nothing we can do about it because we can't stop all of the bad things happening outside. However, because our suffering is being generated from the inside, that means we can do something about it. That means we can actually end it, and we actually have a say in the matter. If it was coming from the outside, we would have no say, there'd be nothing we can do. But because it's coming from the inside, we do have a say, and there's something we can do. And so we have all these different practices that are recommended for us that we can engage in, actively engage in order to benefit ourselves. So let us all do what is beneficial to ourselves, and I think that's all I have to say for this time. Sadhu.
Andamayang Dhammakataya Sadhu Karang Tatamasi. Sadhu, 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 anumodhami.
Thank you so
Sorry,
much.
I don't think I used up all the time.
No, thank you so
I
much.
ask forgiveness.
Um, yes, before we get there, we got to have an equanimous mind and practice compassion first before forgiveness and again. That was the three steps you gave us.
Equanimity before compassion, and
Yeah,
then forgiveness. Yeah.
right, that's right. Oh, what a wonderful session this morning. And I'm quite sure there are people here who've got questions. And if you have got a question, comment, or reflection of today's talk with Ajahn, please feel free to click on the raise hand button. I will invite you to raise your questions to Ajahn. Yes, Jonathan. Jonathan, are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes. Hi, Ajahn, thank you so much for your teaching today. I regularly go to Amravati, so it's so nice to sort of hear you for the first time over in California. It's interesting. I've got two questions. Well, interesting you mentioned about so the person who Louis Zamperini.
Yeah.
I mean, but I'm guessing as a non-Buddhist, he didn't do the meditation, didn't know about BuddhaDhamma Sangha. I'm guessing there's more than one path to finding, be able to cultivate. Was it equanimity, compassion, and then was it forgiveness? Is that right? So, um, yeah. So I guess, and I guess linking to you said you came into the Anagarika at uh, uh, 2001, was it? Did you say? So I guess the question is around, there's people like yourselves. Maybe the question starts with, what drew you to, what were you doing before? Were you like at university or something, or traveling the world or whatever before? Was it suffering in you that brought you to the Sangha? And then there's more than one path to getting there because of to getting living a good life, finding peace. I guess that's my first kind of question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think with Louis Zamperini, he didn't do equanimity, compassion, forgiveness. He just went straight to forgiveness. But the equanimity, compassion part is if you aren't able to forgive, maybe that's a method for getting yourself there. But he went to radical forgiveness through having some sort of insight about it. And yeah, I mean that's even though he became Christian, it was that the part doesn't really matter because it's an illustration of the power of forgiveness. So it shows that I don't think he was an arhat or he got enlightened or anything, but it did show that he was able to turn his life around and be a very upstanding and useful person in society, based on that. Yeah, for myself, yeah, I came to it through suffering. Some different people come to monastic life in different ways. Some people come to it through just a deep interest in the teachings. Some people come to it through wanting to do it to dedicate the merit to somebody else, like their mother or their father. Uh, some people come to it through suffering. So yeah, I was very interested in the Buddha's teachings on how to end suffering, and I really connected with them, and particularly the teachings of Ajahn Chah I found very accessible. So it was really Ajahn Chah's teachings that drew me to the monastery. And I didn't think I would stay as long as I have. It's just I just kept going. I just kept getting more and more interested, and I kept learning a lot, and the suffering did continue to become less. So it did seem like the practice was working and continues to work. So I just always had that sense of, well, I'm just going to keep going as see what happens.
Mm. And so you talk about forgiveness. So there's on the personal level, there is perhaps with somebody who a collaborator who I work with who just keeps I don't know. We keep agreeing we're going to work on this project in this way, and then when we meet again, they're working on the project in a different way. And when I challenge them, they become aggressive. And there've been a couple of times that they started shouting and shouting, like for half an hour and stuff. And oh God. And I don't know if I want to pull up with this. And I think that, equanimity, compassion, forgiveness, I'm thinking need to forgive this person. But if they keep ongoingly not doing what we agree to do, and then when challenged, will be aggressive to the point of, I timed the last time he shouted at me. It was like, and it was two of us, me and another collaborator. So he shouted at the two of us for nearly half an hour, 30 minutes about, oh, you've slighted me, you disrespected me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm trying to calm
Yeah.
them down. So that's when the rubber hits the road, Ajahn. Is there time? I don't know. Forgiveness is hard in that moment, but also should I putting up with that? I don't know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I know exactly what that's like. So yeah, it doesn't mean forgiveness doesn't mean you're condoning someone's behavior. So someone who genuinely has bad behavior, or it doesn't mean you keep working with them, even. The best thing might be to stop working with them or kick them off the team or something. And then, that's, but you do it in a way that you're doing it because it's what's right. It's the best thing to do in that situation. But also you're not going to hold a grudge against them. So if they need to be
Mm,
kicked off the team, then they need to be kicked off the team. I mean, this is something I mean, I've had to ask people to leave the monastery. And if that has to be done, forgiveness doesn't mean you condone people's bad behavior or that you allow it, or even that you allow yourself to be walked all over. That's not what it means. It's actually more of a powerful quality than that. So, but in that particular instance, forgiveness isn't like something that's good in every single situation, even though it is always right to forgive, and it's never right to not forgive. Applying forgiveness is not necessarily the thing you do in every situation. So in that situation, you might apply, say, the Dhamma or the principle of, okay, this person's doing harm. What's going to be the best for the team is to, cut them out of the team. And yeah, that is gonna hurt them, and they're gonna see it as unfair. But
mm,
actually, and the important thing is to not do it with, out of anger if you can. I mean, that's difficult as well. But to just say that this is what's going to be best. This is what's going to be best for the project. This is what's going to be the best for the team. And
mm,
this can happen in the monastery where you have someone who you really feel for them, and you want to see them continue on, but like the entire monastery is being negatively affected by them, and possibly even people are leaving because they're here. So, at that point, it's like, well, do we just keep putting up with their behavior and negatively affecting everybody else who is more forgiving and has a bit more wisdom? Or do we ask that person to leave and thus everybody else is benefited? So you do have these tough decisions that, uh, but
Yeah,
also
that makes
explaining
so.
can also be helpful. Explaining things can be helpful as well, but it's never easy.
Guess so. Thank you very much, Ajahn. Yeah.
That might have to be enough for now. I think there's other questions.
Yes. Cheryl. Cheryl has a question.
Yeah, John. I was wondering if it's possible and sometimes wiser to forgive and not trust the person. Is that
Yeah,
possible?
certainly, because you'll only be able to trust that person if they also do the mutual forgiveness, where you forgive somebody and then they also ask your forgiveness. However, something may have happened where even if they ask forgiveness, it's still not wise to trust them. They may have done too many things that prove them to be an untrustworthy person. And in that case, it's better to keep a healthy distance, maybe if you can, or just, not be too open with that person. You don't want to just be completely open with everybody. We do have to discern, who we can be open with, who we shouldn't. It's not necessarily the case that we just have to completely open up all the time. So there may be people we can open up with who we have a lot of trust in, and there may be other people who it's wiser to not have too much trust in them, but we can still forgive them because the sense of not being able to forgive their behavior is going to cause suffering in our mind. So, but even maybe that's not the best way to say it because we don't want to say it's condoning bad behavior, but it's really we're doing it for ourselves, for the sake of our own practice. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to trust them. Yeah, trust comes about naturally. You can't force yourself to trust somebody.
Thank you for the question. Okay, the next person, Jia Yu, can you unmute yourself? Great, thanks.
Yeah, John, thank you for the Dhamma talk. My question is, when you mentioned about setting up forgiveness from upekkha and then compassion, sometimes when you recall a traumatic event and then the fear and the narrative becomes really, really strong and you are so focused on your own fear, how do you, jumping to upekkha can feel like it's very far? How do you bridge that gap from like
Well, yeah, that's a good one. You might need to back up even more. You might not be able to go into upekkha because thinking about recollecting karma, maybe if the mind has too much fear in the moment, you won't be able to do those recollections. So probably calming it down with breath meditation first, and then when the mind is calm, then going into equanimity by just in a general way, not bringing to mind the memory. Sometimes the memories and the trauma are too triggering and too strong. So, for example, I just found out today, like somebody, the other day, me and a couple other monks went to visit a friend in town who wanted to offer tea to us. And we parked in front of a different apartment than our friend's apartment because that seemed there was a parking spot there. But then uh, our friend got a call from the other apartment where we had parked in front, and she's an elderly woman. She was very upset that we had parked there and wanted us to move, and we were happy to move the car. We moved it right away, but she was very upset for 3 days that we had parked there, even for just a few minutes. And then our friend went and left a card and asked forgiveness. And after a few days, this elderly woman knocked on our friend's door and said, "Sorry, I reacted. I have PTSD because I was, she's like 80 now, but like 20 years ago, somebody broke her window and broke into her apartment and like assaulted her And so she has this trauma from that. And so the parking in front of her apartment like triggered that. So that's where the compassion part comes in fairly easily, where I say, oh, yeah, everybody has a reason for acting the way they do. Like at first, she was like yelling at us and stuff, but there was a whole reason for that, and she ended up asking forgiveness. But at first, if the fear is too strong and the memories are just too strong, and it's kind of like we do have to take baby steps. There's not like a quick solution necessarily for it. So, with meditation, if we just do the breath meditation and we ease the mind a little bit, then we might be able to go into equanimity and compassion and eventually in forgiveness. However, that being said, there can be a time when we have insight, and the insight will help us to forgive much easier. And the forgiveness will be that which heals the trauma events. It will be able to heal it because there will also be sometimes the fear can be that it's going to happen again, and really, we have to feel protected somehow. We have to feel protected somehow by our practice or by the precepts that we're keeping. So precepts are the best protection as well. So we have to actually convince ourselves or feel that we are protected somehow. And especially if the trauma was a long time ago, then we can get to the point where we can forgive it. But everybody's going to come to it in slightly their own way. It's going to be a little bit different for everybody. So no, yeah, no catch-all or totally easy solution that's going to work for everybody.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Thank you for your question, Jane. Are there any other questions from the floor? If not, there's one here, Tanajan. The saying is, it's easier to forgive than to forget. Forgiveness seems to be a conscious choice of an action, of a voluntary action. But forgetting something that you've been hurt, it's really very complex and a very difficult task because there are painful memories that are attached to it. So could Ajahn speak a little bit about this whole thing about it's easier to forgive than forget?
Yeah, can speak to that. The really the painful memories are really what make us human. I mean, we all have these painful memories. I've almost actually considered not translating dukkha as suffering, but translating dukkha as trauma, because it seems like nearly everyone has some trauma in some form or another. And there's the daily low-level trauma that happens through just like hoping you don't meet the person you don't like, or like hoping that things are going to go the way that you hope, you want them to go. But so there's that low-level trauma that does kind of build up, and then there's the big traumas that happen in our life, the breakup, or the boss treating us unfairly, or the embarrassing situation, or the horrific assault that we had to experience. So all of these things are traumatic, and yeah, it's just what to do. There's no a lot of it is, wishing things were otherwise, but then this is all these things that build up over time, these these difficulties, these sufferings that build up over time. That is really what defines us as human beings. And everybody has this. So, we're born into this world, and then we experience all sorts of things. We experience happiness and suffering. And then by the time we're old, we've experienced so much happiness and suffering, we're kind of we can be kind of frazzled and frayed on the edges. So it's like the Native Americans have what's called the feather teaching, where you have a feather, and when the feather is new, the feather is made up a lot of little spines. And when the feather is new, they're all glued together, they're all stuck together. But then over time, you separate parts of the feather and it gets frayed. So all of our sufferings, it's like those pieces of the feather come unglued. And then you can think of every low or high level trauma that we've experienced in our lives, or every suffering is that sense of the feather is getting separated and unglued. And then you have a feather that is, you experience a lot of suffering, then you have a feather that's just like frayed and it's all unglued and it's kind of come apart. However, if you start to want to pull your life back together, then you can take that feather and you can smooth it. You can smooth the feather and you can get the pieces to go back together, but they'll never glue back together. They'll never truly go back together, but you can smooth it into something that resembles the original feather. So the suffering is always there, the trauma is always there, but through practice, you can get something back to where you know resemble this sense of self-confidence and solidity, and it really will resemble the original feather. However, all those unglued parts are still going to be there. All those memories are still going to be there. That suffering is still there, but hopefully we can learn something from it and we can develop Dhamma qualities from it. That's really where compassion comes in, because compassion is really linked with suffering. So anybody here who likes to practice with Guanyin, that's actually during the lockdowns, I took an online Guanyin empowerment with the Dalai Lama. And I thought, oh, it's going to be really nice to be a part of this because it's, it is His Holiness. Even though it's online, he's really there, and we can really get an empowerment from him. So there's a few of us in the monastery who took it, and then I had a little Guanyin image set up next to the computer, and um, but I didn't really. That's when I started. This, I think, 2021. That's when I really gained the insight that compassion is links us more with getting in touch with suffering. So I felt that after I got that Guanyin empowerment, I actually, my life got more difficult after that because I actually came into contact with more suffering. And then I thought, oh, yeah, of course, Guanyin is the one who comes into contact with directly faces suffering, you know. So it's actually more difficult and but more beneficial also, more efficacious, better for our practice, but harder to do and takes a lot of determination and effort. And sometimes when we think of Guanyin, we might not think of those strong qualities. We might think of softness and gentleness and ease and so on. But actually, Guanyin is the one who looks at all the messy stuff that we don't want to look at. And the messy stuff is what makes us human. So it's not like we want to like make things even more messy. We don't want to do that, but we want to at least look at it and clean house, be able to clean house, look at how we're causing ourselves suffering. And actually, that reminds me that Luang Ban, one of the great Kruba Ajahns in Thailand who passed away in 2020, he actually defined the defilements, the kilesa, as the mess makers. So that the defilements, their job is to go around making messes. So they make messes for ourselves and they make messes for others. So he says you want to clean the mess maker out of the mind. So that was a little bit of a tangent, but looks like there's another question.
I think Jonathan typed a question. if I may read it out, it says, there are some very challenging world events affecting innocent children in particular. Whilst living in a safer first world country, I wonder how to make a difference when one feels under-resourced, and also wonder, might a Sangha also be able to take a stance on certain world events, so potentially make a difference? Any reflections, Ajahn?
Yeah, my own reflection is that you just, unless you're really in a position to be able to make a difference, like you actually are, associated with those regions, like we can't do anything. We can't do anything about it. That's where you get into the equanimity and the compassion. So yes, it is horrific. And, before you were able to watch those things on the news, things like that were happening. You just didn't know about it. And there's also things happening in the world that you don't know about that the news isn't showing us. For example, I know right now that there's things happening in the Congo that probably rival what we're getting to see on the news. I mean, it's so horrific that it would be inappropriate to talk about it. And so, there are things happening in the world that are even worse than what we see. And so, there's really, and it seems like it's more now, but I remember talking with Ajahn Amaro about this one time, and he's like, no, this is the norm. It's just we're being shown it a little bit more now. But, people are always, and the reflection is, well, this is what happens with the defilements. It's actually not the people, it's the defilements. The defilements are the mess makers. The defilements are making this huge mess all over the place. So let us get at the defilements. And where can we get at the defilements? Well, we can get at them in our own mind. That's all we can do currently. If we are able to do that, we might be able to affect a change in others. But it's very hard to change the minds of others. Protesting doesn't do it. You can see that. I mean, like it'll just cause other people to dig their heels in. However, I like to reflect on the story of Angulimala, where because of the Buddha's parami, Angulimala, who had killed 999 people and was on the way to kill his own mother, the Buddha was actually able to intervene and effect a change in him. But that's the Buddha. So that because of the power of the parami of the Buddha, he's able to effect a change in someone who is a horrific murderer and actually get him to kind of flip his life around, completely turn his life around. And we will be able to do that too if we practice, and not to that level. We won't be able to do what the Buddha does, but we will be able to affect a change in others. Like, does anybody here know the story of the assassin who tried to kill Ajahn Chah? You probably don't know that story. That's a good story. So Ajahn Chah, he was becoming more famous, and he took a lot of support, left the surrounding village temples and stuff because they wanted to make merit with a real monk, somebody who's really practicing, not just the village monks. So these temples started losing a lot of support in the Ubon area. And we don't know exactly who it was, but one of them hired an assassin to kill Ajahn Chah. And so the assassin went into Wat Pah Pong, and he was tasked with finding Ajahn Chah's, knowing his daily schedule and finding his patterns so that he would know when he could kill Ajahn Chah. And he actually started he went to a Dhamma talk, and through being at Wat Pah Pong and listening to Ajahn Chah's Dhamma talks, he developed faith in Ajahn Chah. And he gave back the contract, and he ordained. He ordained with Ajahn Chah, and he lived as a monk for his entire life, for the rest of his life. He died in the robes. Yeah. It's very powerful. Yeah. So yeah, it's a good story. There's more like that, but I think we're almost out of time.
Well, we'll be very glad to sit and listen to all the stories when you're here in Asia at the end of the year, Ajahn. So that's all the time that we have today. It's getting late where Ajahn is, and I think he's been very generous with his time for this. So let us all conclude by sharing the verses of aspiration, where Tanajan will lead us.
Okay. Now let us chant the verses of sharing and aspiration. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of Death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life, may they soon attain the threefold bliss, and realize the deathless, through the goodness that arises from my practice, and through this act of sharing, may all cravings and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana in every kind of birth. May I have an upright mind, with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble Lord. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled.
With a lot of gratitude, Tanajan, all of us who have gathered here this morning, wherever that we are, we want to express our anumodana to you. Please accept our true respectful bow as we chant the Araham and take leave from you.
Sadhu.
Araham Sama Sambuddho Bhagavan Buddham Bhagavantaya Vivade Swathata Bhagavata Dhamma Dhamma Sudadipanu Bhagavata Sambuddha Sangha Sangha. Thank you so much, Tanajan.
Okay, take care, everybody.
See ya.
Goodbye.